In a world where raw power rules and overconfidence is a one-way ticket to the mat, one name cast the longest shadow: Mariusz Pudzianowski. A 5-time world's strongest man, he swapped colossal deadlifts for thunderous knockouts. And he didn't step into the cage to play nice. Technique was optional. Brute force was his calling card. Every time an opponent tried to show off, they learned the hard way that size isn't just for show. This is the tale of cocky fighters who met a mountain of muscle and paid the price. In May 2022, Pudzianowski stormed into the cage like a snarling freight train, every step rattling the canvas with deadly intent. Opposite him stood Mika Martella, inked from shoulder to elbow, pitbull motif stitched across his shorts, but there was nothing ferocious about his timid jabs. They circled at first, both fighters testing the waters, until boredom took hold of Mariusz. In a heartbeat, he charged forward, bulldozing Martella with a thunderous slam that shook the arena. Without missing a beat, he followed up with a brutal kick that landed square on Martella's midsection, winding him before the crowd even realized what had happened. As Martella gasped for air, Pudzianowski flicked the switch. His next shot, a perfectly timed uppercut, sent the tattooed challenger crashing to the mat like a rag doll.
It was an absolute volcano, the world's strongest.
Medics flooded the ring, but their efforts couldn't repair the bruised ego or the shattered confidence of yet another overmatched opponent. Beneath the unyielding weight of Polish granite fists, Martella lay buried, his cocky bravado reduced to scattered echoes in the roar of the crowd. A hulking 350-pound behemoth known only as the Sand Giant stomped into the cage, an unbeaten mountain of muscle straight from the African dunes. With each thunderous step, the air seemed to tremble beneath his weight. He lunged at Pudzianowski like a charging rhino, wild hooks ripping through space as if to prove that raw power alone could topple a titan. But Mariusz stood ice cold, eyes locked on his prey. In a heartbeat, he seized the moment. A single earth-shaking punch that landed square on the giant's jaw.
Chop the legs and look above it again.
The crowd held its breath as the Sand Giant folded inward, collapsing like a crumbling fortress of sand. One dominant strike, one unforgettable lesson in humility. Next up was a Gracie, a name synonymous with jiu-jitsu royalty, Rolls. Gracie swaggered into the cage, confidence oozing from every measured step, certain his ground game would carry the day. He tested the distance with light kicks, tapping into every ounce of technique he'd honed since childhood. But you don't face a man who deadlifts trucks with fancy footwork alone. Before Rolls could even set his grips, Mariusz closed the gap, unleashing a brutal, looping hook that landed with the force of a battering ram. In an instant, Gracie bent at the waist, folding inward like a stack of laundry dumped from the line. The impact reverberated through the steel walls, and for a heartbeat, even the cage itself seemed to recoil. And as the dust settled, one truth became clear. In Pudzianowski's world, pedigree means nothing against pure, unrelenting power. In 2009, the stage was set for what would become dubbed the shirtless lesson. Marcin Najman swaggered into the ring, bare-chested and brimming with bravado, his hands clenched as if the title belt was already his. Before the opening bell even rang, Mariusz Pudzianowski tore off his own shirt in one swift motion, a silent declaration that this wouldn't be a technical chess match but a raw demonstration of dominance. The moment the fight began, Pudzianowski surged forward like a runaway locomotive. There was no feint, no wasted motion, just pure, unfiltered aggression. Within seconds, he plowed into Najman with a shoulder-driven takedown so brutal it rattled the entire arena. Najman hit the canvas with a thunderous thud, gasping for air and desperately trying to shield himself. Pudzianowski leaned in and delivered a pair of ground-and-pound strikes that landed with the force of sledgehammers. Referee and ringside officials rushed in, not to break up a technical exchange, but to pull Najman away from a beating that was spiraling out of control. In that instant, the lesson was clear. Never mistake showmanship for substance when you're up against a living juggernaut. When the Bosnian bulldozer, Ero June, stormed into the cage, he carried the weight of 3 straight KOs and a tank-driving rage in his fists. From the opening bell, Mariusz met him head-on, catching June's wild punch and sending him sprawling like a ragdoll across the mat. With merciless precision, he rained down hammer blows, each strike threatening to remap June's face with brutal artistry, but June refused to stay down. In the second round, he scrambled to his feet, seized top position, and pressed Pudzianowski against the cage, hanging on like a cornered animal while the referee warned him to break. Gasping for air, Mariusz reset his stance, eyes narrowing as he plotted his next move. Then, in the heartbeat before disaster, June slipped in the tangle of limbs, and in that split second, Mariusz was all over him. He mounted Jun's chest and unleashed what could only be called sledgehammer justice. Thunderous elbows and fists hammering down, each blow echoing like iron striking anvil. By the time the ref dove in to save the Bosnian's battered shell, one truth was undeniable. Any hope of surviving Pudzianowski's wrath was as doomed as standing in front of a runaway train. In the sweltering heat of summer 2021, Lukas Jurovski swaggered into the cage with a grin so wide it looked painted on. He launched into action with lightning-fast high kicks, each one a flashing declaration of confidence, as he taunted Pudzianowski with mocking smiles and theatrical showboating. But beneath that polished facade lay a fatal flaw. He underestimated the man built like a tank. When Jurovski's shin sliced through the air, Mariusz didn't flinch. He seized the incoming leg in mid-arc, yanking his opponent off balance before driving him to the mat like a freight car smashing into a barrier. Once Lukas hit the canvas, there was no mercy. Pudzianowski unleashed a barrage of elbows, each strike thudding against flesh like a steroid-charged hammer. Jurovski writhed, eyes wide in disbelief, but refused even the slightest gesture of sportsmanship when the ref offered a hand to help him up. That defiance sealed his fate. With a cold, calculating glare, Mariusz loaded up his most devastating weapon, a crucifix of a right hand cocked and ready. Time seemed to warp as that fist rocketed forward, connecting with Jurovski's jaw in an explosion of force that reverberated through the arena. Jurovski crumpled, the echoes of impact lingering long after he hit the mat, an unforgettable testament to the raw, unyielding power of Pudzianowski. When Bob Sapp, towering like a Soviet-era brawler with fists the size of wrecking balls, stepped into the cage, you could almost hear the echoes of stadiums pass trembling beneath his heavy boots. The bell barely tolled before Mariusz Pudzianowski exploded forward like a rabid bear unleashed from its chains. Sapp's massive frame crumpled under the charge, and in the instant he hit the mat, the arena held its breath. What followed was pure, unadulterated punishment. Pudzianowski rained down blows with the relentless fury of a Stalinist hammer and sickle, each strike punishing flesh and bone in equal measure. Blood mingled with sweat as Sapp tried to shield himself, but Mariusz showed no mercy. When the dust settled, Bob Sapp was a shell of the mountain he once was. His vaunted toughness shattered, and the legend of Pudzianowski's ruthless power only grew stronger. Then came the legend himself, Eric Butterbean Esch, the round man with the iron fist and a reputation for crushing souls in seconds. For a fleeting moment, the crowd's pulse quickened as Butterbean's massive frame loomed across the cage, his trademark grin daring anyone to stand in his way. He launched a series of heavy, looping hooks that snapped the camera's focus. And for a heartbeat, it looked like Pudzianowski might be in real trouble. But Mariusz doesn't flinch. Like a predator sensing weakness, he closed the distance in a single cat-like surge. With one arm wrapped around Butterbean's waist, he drove him backward, dragging the former boxer into the cage's center where there was nowhere to hide. Then with the precision of a sculptor, he climbed on top, pinning Butterbean beneath a mountain of Polish power. What followed was the stuff of nightmares. Mariusz rained down fists and elbows with the relentlessness of a jackhammer, each blow folding Butterbean's defenses inward. The crowd's roar turned to stunned silence as the king of the four-rounders was ground down into nothing more than mashed potatoes on the mat. Referees and cornermen swarmed in, practically prying Butterbean off the canvas, an almost comical rescue from the unyielding force of Pudzianowski's assault. In the end, Pudzianowski never chased the UFC spotlight. He didn't need to. With every match he stepped into, he handed down raw justice, pairing unbridled strength with brutal efficiency. He dismantled overconfident showboats, reshaping their inflated egos into shattered remains of pride. And somewhere in the echo of every fallen challenger, one truth remains. When hubris meets the hammer of a world's strongest man, there's no room for excuses, only the thunderous crack of reality.